All right, hey you guys, welcome back to Taking Flight with me. My name is Mike Rocket Blackstone. Today is the 31st of December, 2024. And man, we've had quite the year for aviation incidences this year. This one now is Jeju Flight 2216 to finish off the year. Wow, it's shocking. As a current Boeing pilot on the Boeing 777 aircraft, I was a pilot and a captain of the Boeing 737-800, just like the one I have in front of me here. A lot of time on that aircraft. I feel safe in that thing. That is the workhorse of the aviation industry. It is what literally builds the entire aviation community robust, safe, easy to fly, lots of redundancy, a very, very capable aircraft in a skilled pilot's hands. That is what Boeing makes, and that's why I love flying the Boeing aircraft and have for my 25-year career at a major airline. That being said, I'm shocked by what I see here in Muan, South Korea, with this aircraft having flown from Bangkok, Thailand, 4.5 hours northeast bound, between 2:30 in the morning. I think it left an hour late. It left at 3:30 in the morning and showed up at around 9 a.m. local. Has a bird strike and does some kind of a whiff-or-dill maneuver and crashes 4 minutes later. It's shocking to me. I do have some data that I'd like to go through that was pointed out to me by some research. The pilot blog guy, Dennis, did a really nice job. If you're interested in his, I'll put a link down below. He's got a great report on this thing. And he's also a 737 captain. He found a really interesting article that literally breaks down the timeline from the Mayday at 0859 local, where they report the bird strike, which we're all wondering why they just didn't land. Like, even in the current configuration, bump the throttle up on the good engine and just go straight ahead and land. And if both engines are out, you could reduce some of the flaps, rebug it and land flaps 20 if you had reduced power on both engines. If both engines were affected by a flock of birds, which could have happened. I'm more of a hand flying pilot. So I take this back from all the way back from Bangkok. The first thing I'm thinking about from a pilot's perspective is, what was their rest situation? How were they looking at 2:30 in the morning before they even left? Was this thing a fatigue incident from all the way back in Bangkok 4.5 hours prior? They left an hour late, then they get there in the morning. Whose leg was it? What's the crew qualifications of both pilots? How much flight time did the PIC have? The pilot in command is the captain of the ship. Ultimately, he's responsible for whatever happens out there, no matter who's with you in the right seat. Yes, it would be awesome to have a super senior co-pilot that knows everything there is to know about the Boeing 737 and has thousands of hours in this thing. Or are we talking about a relatively junior crew with very little time in the right seat and a new hire possibly within the first year or so of working at a major airline, and then the pressure of a all-night flight, either down and back? Was this one of those, like this where they deadhead you down and fly back, or worse yet, did you fly down and turn around and fly back? That would have been horrendous and barely illegal if possible at all. So and then pilots are allowed to extend. Hey, they've got 175 people waiting to go. Would you guys be willing to extend your duty day and power through and have another shot of coffee and go for this? Depending on your rest level and your vigor for life and capability, that is oftentimes a terrible idea. So this is an example of what happens when guys could be pushed into a fatigue situation that they weren't really capable of handling. And then when you are tired, we rely on muscle memory and experience. So when you get some gray hair like I have and have flown plenty of all-nighters, you can handle a little more fatigue when you have a lot more experience. When you don't have a lot of experience, that's when those holes of the Swiss cheese start to line up, that you don't have the skill and the capability to cover for fatigue. And for those of you that aren't familiar with what fatigue does to pilots, and we're really not that great at assessing your how well you are. If you're a high energy guy like myself, you can maybe muster it up and turn the corner and do some more. But if you are not able to muster the energy, and more coffee won't cut it, you literally won't feel better until you get some sleep. And fatigue is insidious. And it often affects our cognitive capability, much as alcohol would, that you are becoming less and less capable. Like, imagine a 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning drive down a dark road in a country road that you're going to be nodding off and having a hard time focusing. Even if you thought that you were good enough to go, it may be as if you had several cocktails and were significantly impaired. So showing up super late to work and then flying all night long and thinking you can coffee yourself into alertness and being cognitively ready for an emergency like these guys had going into Muan is optimistic at best, adding risk to the situation. So as pilots and as airline pilots, we assess risk. What we do is we are managers of risk. So we oftentimes will ask the other guy when we get to work, threat forward. What are our threats tonight? Yes, it's an all-nighter. How much time do you have in the airplane? Did you get any rest today? How you feeling? Are you going to be good when we get there? Things like that. So you can kind of get a flavor for what you're going to do. And then we like to be ready for what could happen on the arrival. Hey, there's known birds in the area of this airport. If we were to get a bird strike, what's our plan? Do we want to come back and land at this airport? What's the wind? There's no wind today. There was no wind wind was not an issue, so they could land either direction. But why did they not just go ahead and just land on the northbound runway is a mystery to me and to many pilots, of course. Rebug the airplane, go flaps 30 and land, continue. Yes, it's shocking. Yes, it's not running that great. Could we roll the right throttle back, push the left throttle up and continue and make a safe landing? Yes. And why didn't we do that here? So in the 737, I don't know if some of you are aware of it, but a go around in this thing is a manual event. Not a big deal for those of us that like to fly airplanes with the autopilot off. But if you are an automation dependent kind of guy or gal, that you're motoring along autopilot on, then this thing hits a bird and then now it's going over here. Now you're suddenly breaking glass and flying airplane. And now you are just getting in the loop of flying this thing as it's surging and turning and smoking and whatever else it's going to do. That's kind of not a great time to get on the controls, especially after an all-nighter. So for me, I prefer to turn the autopilot off sooner and get my head in the game. Autopilot off, auto throttle off, or just autopilot at least so you've got the flight controls in your hands and let the auto throttles maintain the speed. That's fine. But when you're looking outside, if you were to see a flock of birds, cobbing the power and giving it a climb and missing the flock of birds is always the best result of a bird incident, is to avoid them altogether versus plow through them and then recover from the damage of whatever happened, either to the engine or to the windscreen or whatever. We don't want to hit birds on purpose, but we do tend to hit a lot of birds out there in flying in general. It's not a great thing, but the planes are designed to take a certain amount of bird impacts through the engines or through the windshield or into the windshields up to a certain weight and certain speed. The best outcome is, of course, to avoid. See and avoid. You see a flock of birds, any size birds, even sparrows. I don't want to hit a flock of them, but big birds, we're talking like seabirds, like seagulls, vultures, things like that are big enough to cause a lot of damage to airplanes. That being said, the engines are designed to take birds into the engines, and it could very well cause a compressor stall, could very well cause a surge or a vibration. It could break off some of the blades. And the bottom line is, if that engine is still running and producing some thrust and it's not on fire and it's running badly, you can pull the throttle back and continue, especially if you're this close to the airport. So that's my first initial reaction, is why didn't they just continue? Now, let's take a look at my screen here. Let me pop this up. I can go to here and come to this picture, and this is the report. It shows at 8:59 local, flight 2216, they reported a bird strike. They said, Mayday, 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 which means our airplane is in imminent danger. Our aircraft and our passengers are in a life-threatening situation. They could have rolled the trucks and landed straight ahead. That's what I would have done, even if both engines were hit. I think that seems reasonable to me. But panicking, and they thought maybe they wanted to do something with the airplane to make it better and safer, maybe a go around. So let's say they go around and they push the throttle up on both engines, and maybe the right engine's running badly, so they turn left, and for whatever reason, they shut down after they get the gear and flaps up. The plane clearly was gear and flaps up when it landed. They shut down the wrong engine. It seems to be that's what we're dealing with, because that would explain why they were unable to get the gear down again. This airplane requires hydraulic pressure from system A, which is the left hydraulic system, system A. It runs off the left engine. You need hydraulic pressure to bring that gear down or up. So obviously the engine was running, the left engine was running when they brought the gear up and flaps up, but then when they came into land, it was not running. So somewhere between 8:59 and 9:02, wow, that's such a fast time. It's like 3 minutes, right? That they managed to shut down the left engine, or deemed it not necessary to put the gear back down. You're going to land on a concrete strip with no brakes, no tires, no way to absorb any of this energy of a high-speed aircraft running down a 9,000-foot runway. And then what's the landing data you have to support this? No flap, no gear landing. You got, in 3 minutes, you ran any of those numbers? There's just no way, right? So it concerns me that they did not just have the capability to just keep the plane configured, recognize what they had. If the engine was burping or surging or backfiring, pull that throttle back and push the throttle up on the other side. Maybe go to flaps 30, maybe not. Just add enough throttle and come in and land. You're already high enough, and you can just bump the throttle on the remaining engine and land. Even the bad engine, if it's running badly, it could still provide enough thrust to get you to the airport. That would have been way safer than performing some maneuver out to try to come back and land 4 minutes later. Shocking. So let's go to the Flight Radar 24 picture here, and it's really this one, and it just stops short of the airport there, that they have all the way to the end of the line. It literally takes it to just short of the airport there, south of the field. You can see all the water here. If they're going to lose the right engine and then maneuver back and land to the south, and they're opting to go for this thing, flaps up, gear up, did they have double engine problems? And is it because of the birds, or was it self-inflicted? Did they shut the left engine down, and now the right one is still running badly, but it's still running? And we can see that when we look at the footage here. Let's make this a big screen here. You can see this. Take a look at this footage of Jeju 2216. Right after it touched down, as I look at this, I could see the right thrust reverser deployed. That little slit in the right engine is a sleeve that pops open, and it's providing a place for the air to escape. And literally, the engine that looks to have been the one that had a bird strike and did a backfire or a compressor stall, puff of flame and smoke out the back, that's the engine that actually is still running, and it's in the reverse mode. They're reversing this engine, trying to stop. And here's the video of it as it zooms past with the gear completely stowed. So in the 737, this airplane does not have any reason not to be able to deploy the landing gear. They normally come up and down with the left engine. the one that we don't think was damaged by the bird strike by the video that was shown with the puff of smoke out the right engine. I don't know if you guys need to see that or not. You probably could find that video as well. But why does it appear that the right engine is the one in reverse and the left engine not, and the gear are stowed? Would make sense to me that they did not shut down the correct engine. Really, the right engine should have been secured, and it would have been unable to deploy the reverser if it was shut down. The left engine would have been the one they were flying in on, and if the left engine was running, they would have had hydraulic pressure, and the system A pressure would have been able to bring the gear down under the normal way. Why aren't the gear down? With 4 big giant Goodyear tires under there with brakes max, this thing would have been able to stop on 4,000 feet of runway, even if they landed long, which they clearly did here. Landed on the approach end of the runway, if the gear were down, they'd had more drag, they'd had an engine running to bring them in. They would have had flaps out, and as they touched down, the speed brakes, the ground spoilers would have come up to help get the weight on the wheels, to get the energy to begin dissipating, which would not have been 150 knots. It would have been like 135, 140 knots. And they would have had plenty of runway to stop. But landing on the belly, there is no drag from the flaps, no drag from the ground spoilers popping up on the top of the wings to help spoil the lift. And you'd had wheels and brakes, and you'd had a reverser on the left engine. Instead, we had this, which was way, way worse. And as I look at this picture, I mean, the nose is still in the air. It's almost like he's trying for a nice smooth touchdown on the nose to save the skin of the belly or something. But then you look at this picture of the airport as you zoom in here. We see the airport where the resting spot was at the end of the runway, some 400 meters south of the approach end of runway 1, or the far end of runway 19, is that berm. Okay, now this berm is right about here. They were on the center line essentially when they went off the runway. There's only one runway here, and they could have veered right or left to get this thing into the dirt to start digging in. I mean, if you're going to go with a belly up landing, the concrete is the slickest surface out there. Why, when they realized they landed long, not fade this thing with the left rudder, kick a little left rudder, get it into the dirt? And as you start to see that berm at the far end, angle 45 degrees more left and just head away from it. I don't see the reason to just take that berm head on like that. I don't think they realized it had reinforced concrete in it, but it was a tall berm. And from what I understand, they get flooding there. So there is water. So if you're going to pull a Sully, why wouldn't you add some power on your motor that obviously brought you there? Obviously it was still running. Add some power on that broken motor if you landed long, and veer it off and put it down in the water, which was water on the right side, a large body of water. Let's go back to that. You can see it here. The right side of this thing, zoom in here, veer right here and put it down in this body of water. They'd have been way better off being in the water than hitting that berm at 150 knots, right? So these are my initial thoughts. Obviously, we are all waiting for the flight. It's interesting. The ADS-B data is just gone. It's like he's going northbound and then it just turns off. Did they roll off the transponder and just kill all the ADS-B data so we don't have any data? But the last known position was at 800 feet and 144 knots. Totally a position to land out there. That would have been adequate. But why does it just end there? And how come there's no live ATC data? So we want to hear the conversation between the crew for 3.5, 4 minutes. What were they saying to the control tower? And if anything, And then we're going to want to hear the tapes in the flight data and the cockpit voice recorders of what they were doing in there. What was the checklist that they were doing, if any, and why were they in such a big hurry? This airplane flies beautifully on one motor, one engine. We fly at single engine in the training all the time. I've never had a bird strike, so this startle factor certainly is something that would come up. But you compose after you have an emergency. You sit on your hands a second, say, state the problem, cancel the caution, state the problem, cancel the warning. What do we have wrong with the airplane? Oh, boss, we got the right engine, malfunctioning. The vibes are up. The engine's over temping. We got an EGT. It's overheating. It's cooking. Oh, okay, bring the right engine back. Let's get that checklist out. Okay, so we're wondering why this isn't happening. So first thing first is fly the airplane, right? Break glass, fly the airplane, aviate, navigate. Where are we? Can we make the airport? Oh yeah, we can make the airport. Okay, now tell the tower, we've got an emergency. We just had an engine failure. We hit some birds and we're gonna land, roll the trucks. We think the right engine's on fire, okay? That would be 30 seconds later, they would have been on the ground rolling out with the wheels down and braking. That works. They changed everything at the last minute and then made a U-turn and came back and landed on 19. Now in this diagram here, we've got kind of a layout of the airport diagram, and so if I can zoom in on this thing, and you can kind of see where they ended up down here at the south end of the field. If they would have landed north, there was actually a bit more overrun to the north, and of course no berm that direction. So obviously hindsight's 2020, but man, switching it all up at the last second to land with the opposite direction just didn't make a lot of sense. And then and this guy's really great video here. He's got a diagram of where, look at this, check this shot out, okay? From Pilot Blog, he's got a kind of a diagram of what they think they did and reversed course tight, and they came back in and landed so tight that they probably got high, and if they went on the west side of the airport for a right turn in, the captain, if he was flying the airplane, which he should have been if he's got more time in the airplane, and this is an emergency, he should have been flying this thing. Why would you want to make a right turn in when you're sitting in the left seat? It's very difficult to see the runway when you're in a right-hand turn from the left seat, and the tighter in you are, that's not good. And how come he didn't use the speed brakes if he was high, to get this thing down and try to hit the touchdown point of the, like in the first, third of the runway for sure. But like, if I was going to be trying to use this whole runway, I'd be trying to catch the first brick out there. And then why didn't he kick the rudder halfway down and just steer away from the berm at the end and angle away towards the left out there into the dirt earlier? Would have helped slow the plane down too. So these are my initial thoughts on this. I am just mortified at the level of what's happened here. I hate to say it, terrible airmanship, terrible judgment, a terrible circumstance, and then to compound things is to rush another situation of very, very rushed decision making. There really is no reason to rush like this. A bird strike happens a lot. We're talking about thousands and thousands of bird strikes a year in America alone. The number I heard last was 20-some thousand bird strike incidents a year in North America alone. It's very, very common, and these airplanes can take it. Can your crew handle it properly? I believe that this is a sign that maybe the training in this airline, it was not adequate. They didn't seem to have what they needed to pull it together after a bird strike, which should have been a very, very routine emergency landing. Damage to a motor, yes. Should not have lost the aircraft. They should not have damaged the aircraft, and they certainly should not have killed 179 people. as a result of a bird strike incident on a VFR day to a VFR landing. This just literally should not have been able to happen at this catastrophic of a level, which is the worst accident in South Korean history since like 1997. This is like the worst incident they've had. So with that in mind, my heart goes out to the victims of the families of this incident, and I'm praying for the recovery of the 2 crew members that survived this. The 2 flight attendants in the tail that survived this incident are very lucky, and I'm glad that they survived it, but I'm just so sad for the rest of the families. So with that in mind, hopefully this helps bring some more understanding as to what could have happened and what might be a better way to have handled it. Hopefully we can all learn something from this event to have it never repeat, and to make these ILS emplacements of where they are more breakable. They should be easy to knock down and mow flat. If you hit them, they should not stop an airplane. It's not designed to stop an airplane. It should have broken off and allowed the airplane to pass through there. Clearly over-engineered and much more robust than it needed to be. And we hope that they'll make an adjustment in the way we build airports to compensate for a possibility of something terribly going wrong, and then certainly not making the situation worse for a pilot that overruns an airport. So if this was in bad weather condition, in rain and a wind shear, or some kind of an unusual weather event that caused them to go off the end, it could have happened to somebody on their wheels at higher speed and really damaged the airplane and killed a bunch of people. So yes, that berm at the end was a factor, but it did not cause this incident. All of this was apparently caused by some very, very poor decision making by the pilots that were on board and not handling the situation properly, possibly shutting down the wrong engine. And if they ended up with a double engine malfunction, they would have been better off just continuing to glide in, land, reconfigure, like had happened with the 777 landing in Heathrow years ago. With an icing situation on the motors, totally different situation, but reducing the flaps slightly, maybe going to flaps 15 or flaps 20, extending the glide and landing it northbound would have been a much safer situation if both engines were out, which I don't think happened here, but if that were to have happened, it would have been better. So with that in mind, we'll see you guys in the next episode. If I've gotten anything screwed up, or we need to clarify anything, or do any other options that may have happened, please put it down in the comments, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next episode. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.